All right, Denard and Jennifer, are you about ready to get us kicked off for today?
Yes, we are. Welcome everyone for joining. Thank you for joining. And my name is Denard, and I am the current MSW Student Representative. And I want to also give an opportunity for the two others that are here with us to introduce themselves. But I want to kick us off in a way to interact with each other and just do something that's free of cost, which is an opportunity to laugh at us while you enjoy laughter within yourself. So I've already prepped the host here, and which is Dwayne and Jennifer, who you will hear from. They will tell you their names and what their association with the Michigan NASW chapter is. And then afterwards, they will share with you how they feel and by singing a song. So as you heard me gulp here, I'm actually trying to make sure I manage my nerves before I model what I'm asking them to do. So I am a newly, what's the word? I am newly navigating the waters of being a father. And my mother, who is my son's grandmother, she has a song that she sings no matter what is going on. And it's this song, and it makes me feel this way right now because I feel like a child, because I'm in need of my mother as I'm getting to the end of this semester. I need someone to help corral all my emotions. So this is the song she sings every day. And again, my name is Denard. I'm the MSW student rep, and this is how I feel. Three little monkeys jumping on the bed. One fell down and bumped his head. The mama called the doctor, and the doctor said, all right, that's how I'm feeling. So I would love to pass it. Thank you, Dwayne. Since you were clapping, I think it would be a great opportunity to pass it. Nope, not Dwayne, but Jennifer. Jennifer, would you mind introducing yourself and telling us how you feel by sharing the song?
Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Lafon. I am the BSW Representative for NASW Michigan. I am a senior at the University of Detroit Mercy. And Denard, I suppose I feel happy, like Pharrell. I feel happy. That's all you get. The rest you have to pay for.
Thank you, thank you. That I love it. I love it. I love it. As you all can see, we're a little happy family. Jennifer and I have had an opportunity through as student reps to get to know each other a little bit more, and you'll be hearing a little bit more about why Jennifer and I joined afterwards. And we do have a guest presenter with us, so I do not want to take too much of everyone's time, but I do want to again welcome everyone here. And if you have anybody that you know that is in the midst of trying to decide what to do, what's next, and I saw a few people graduating, know that you're not alone. So invite someone, tell someone, share it on Facebook. And also, Dwayne, here's your turn. Bring out the trombone, brother.
All right, Denard. Hi, everyone. Dwayne Brezak. I'm the Director of Member Services with the Michigan chapter. I know we've got some out-of-state folks on here, so welcome. I am a 2012 grad of the University of Michigan's MSW program, and I've got a prop to go along with my song, which I don't think Denard was prepared for a prop, but here we go anyway. I keep it in my office. So I was in the marching band during my undergrad at U of M, and it's the tournament, and we play tonight. So hail to the victors, valiant, hail to the conquering heroes. Go Blue.
All right, and just so that we can get some engagement before Dwayne shares with us why we're all here today, I'm pretty sure many people know, but if you can share in the chat how you're feeling in the form of a song, we will keep it PG-13 as much as possible. So just share how you're feeling. And Dwayne, why are we here and what can we look forward to?
Why are you here? Well, that's a great question. I'm hoping you're here because you are either a graduating student or maybe somebody in the field who's looking to transition into a different area of the field and looking to explore how to find a job after graduation. Obviously, the last year has changed things up a little bit in terms of social work hiring. I know in terms of what we've seen at NASW, for about the first 5 months of the pandemic, I would say there was a large amount of hiring freezes across the state, at least in Michigan, and many organizations were struggling to move things virtually. And so I think that in terms of how they were bringing in people also slowed during that process. But what we've seen, especially since the beginning of this year, is things are starting to ramp back up, which is really good for you all. And one of the things that I have also noticed is there's more management level positions becoming open in various parts of our field. There's also a lot of unique sorts of positions that are opening up in different avenues of social work, partially because of the climate we're in, a lot of DEI positions, there's positions in libraries. We've seen more and more unique positions all across Michigan, but also nationally. And so today is to get your questions answered about maybe concerns you're having around what next after graduation. This is not a licensure workshop, so we're not specifically going to go into that whole process today. I'm going to put some resources in the chat box if you have specific questions around Michigan licensing, because we know that that's a whole nother ball of wax that you all probably have some questions on. But we want to use this time to really help you all get to that first job after graduation. So whether it's talking about career opportunities, salary negotiation, money, student debt, all those things that relay are really important to folks as they apply for their first job after school. And we're so excited to have Michelle Woods with us today. Michelle is a social work rock star. Michelle runs the Career Services Department at the University of Michigan School of Social Work. We're really lucky in Michigan to have her. There are very few schools of social work across the country that have a career services department specifically for their social work department. And she does a fantastic work. So she's gonna give us some good tips and tools. And yeah, that's kind of why I'm hoping you're all here today.
Great.
So let's turn it over to Michelle if you're all good. Yeah, let's go ahead, Michelle. And let me make sure I can, I'll open up the line so you can share your screen too.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me here today. It is very exciting, and I look forward to talking individually with each and every one of you if you should choose to. I'm excited that you all are here and embarking on going into this wonderful field of social work. I graduated with my MSW back in 94. And so I'm always happy to see new energy and the enthusiasm of graduates going into the field. And we are so in need of you, especially now. I guess I should sing my song before I get started. I've been on Zoom all day today. So mine is "Who's Zooming Who" by Aretha Franklin. That's what I kind of thought of. That's been all day. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll get into today's session. So here. So Dwayne asked me to talk about just some general tips to get you excited and in the thick of job searching. And I know it's a big anxiety provoking aspect of graduating, going into the field, getting that first job, but you can do it. There, like Dwayne talked about, there's a lot of enthusiasm and opening up of positions now in the field and across the country in many different areas. So I'm going to talk about how you can best prepare for those positions to really get you thinking about kind of how to market yourself and where to look for jobs. So let's talk a little bit about the current atmosphere out there. I had several conversations with individuals in HR departments at different social work organizations, nonprofits, as well as with some non-traditional areas of social work at universities and with the federal government. And what happened after COVID is the online driven of the hiring process. So everything has really moved online now. Now, before COVID, it would be a combination. So organizations would advertise some of their positions on their website, but they often got a lot of their advertisements out through word of mouth. And so they kind of recruited that way. With COVID and having everything online or at home, people working from home, the recruitment has gone totally online. So you have to really become comfortable with technology and doing your search online. Also, interviews are done through either phone screening or through Zoom or Skype type of formats. So even the interviewing process has gone out of the in-person kind of status. So you really have to think about everything online, from applying to even having a phone screening sometimes with an organization, and then sometimes an additional Zoom or Skype interview with an organization. Some organizations are even doing their onboarding online. So once you get an offer, then they're training and all of that through modules, videos, until they're able to fully go back in person. So just to kind of give you an idea of that, I'm just checking the chat to see, oops. So the other thing to really think about is the fact that networking is still key. So even though organizations went fully online, they are still relying on a lot of networking to bring in the best people for the position that they're looking to fill. About a third of new hires are referred, and that means that either a third party, an employee referred the person to get interviewed or to apply at their organization, or they got referred by a faculty member. Sometimes they're referrals through your field placement. So a lot of organizations still rely on networking and referral as a way to bring in new talent. Also, keep in mind that with large organizations, so if you are going to apply for the federal government or a big organization like a university or United Way, a nonprofit that's been established for a long period of time, and they have national offices, they often have HR personnel pre-screening application materials, and they sometimes have an application tracking system, which means that it's a computer that is screening or scanning out documents. And then those who are successfully made or are successfully screened through the application tracking system, those are the few who are invited in for an interview. So you want to keep that in mind when you put together your documents, your resume, and your cover letter, because you want to be very strategic, very focused, and very concise and targeted with your materials to the job that you are applying for. So in the event that someone in the HR department who often does not have a degree in social work, if they're pre-screening your materials, they can line up your skills with what they're looking for and you won't get screened out. Also, tracking systems usually have keywords that are placed in the tracking system or the computer, and then that computer will scan your document for those keywords. So you want to make sure your materials are targeted, and keep in mind that employers who are looking for employees to fill jobs, those hiring managers are not, do not have a reduction in the job that they're performing on a daily basis in order to make time to hire. So they are spending additional time and they want to make sure that time is spent well. So they typically will not interview a lot of people. They will interview 5 to 10 best candidates. Even if they get 100 applications, they're usually having a phone screening first, and then they're inviting from the phone screening about 5 to 10 candidates. So that's really important to think about when looking for jobs, because you want to be strategic and get one of those interview spots. So given those current kind of perspective or market conditions, what should you do? And I'm going to talk about these in greater detail. I'm going to talk about how to do a self-assessment so you're aware of what skills you have and how you best fit in with a particular job that you're interested in. I'm going to talk about how to look at different or what different search engines and organizations are out there so that you can look at and search for organizations where you feel that you're the best fit. We're going to talk about informational interviewing a little bit, and I will answer questions about resume and cover letter. This was more about job searching, so I didn't want to really get into the detail of the nuts and bolts of a resume and cover letter, but it really should be tailored to each and every specific job that you're applying to. Please do not send out a blanket resume and cover letter to every job out there that you want to apply to. That is the best way to get scanned out. And you also want to spend some time practicing how to market yourself. And that means preparing for your interview and going over your resume and your cover letter and how you fit in with different jobs and being able to articulate how you are the best fit for a particular organization. So let's talk about self-assessment first. And in social work, we do a lot of assessment of where we're at, where we want to go and such. So you should be familiar with this aspect of just thinking about yourself and social work. So you really want to take some time to write down what your first ideal job would look like. What do you want to do right after graduation? And that could be from your field experiences. So when you were in your field placement, what did you like about your field placement? What did you find that you did not like doing? Did you like working at your field placement because it was a small organization? Did you prefer a larger organization? Are you really creative and like a lot of uncertainty? So you like to work for a grassroots organization or a startup organization? Are you a person who is very structured and like an organization that's been around for a lot of years? And so you want more historical foundation and financial backing and so forth. You don't want that uncertainty. You want to work for an organization that's more established. What do you want to do? And what type of organization do you want to work for? And then when you have an idea of that, you write down that entry level position. And then you think about, okay, what do I want to do 2 years from now or 5 years? What are my long-term goals? Do I want to get my my licensure in clinical, advanced license in clinical social work? So I want to be with an organization where I'm getting supervision and the opportunity to get that professional development towards licensure. So that's what I want to do 2 years from now. Do you want to open up a private practice? Do you want to become a supervisor within an organization? So you might start off with being a program planner or a project manager for an organization, and then you work your way up to being a manager of a department or an executive director or of an organization. And what are your short-term goals and long-term goals? And it's good to write these things down because oftentimes in interviews, organizations will ask you, what are your long-term goals? And essentially they want to know, do you see yourself growing within this organization? Have you thought about your professional development as a social worker? And what can you provide this organization long-term? Are you here just for a job onto something else? And so they may not be interested in hiring you because you're just there and you have no idea how you'll fit in, what you want to do long-term. So it's good to think about that. The other part of focusing on your self-assessment is to know why you should be hired for a particular position. And a great way to do this is to really look at or scan the landscape. Once you have an idea what position you're interested in, scanning the landscape for job descriptions that display that type of job. Then you can look at what skills are required to do that job. And then you can go through that job description or several job descriptions and highlight those skills and then that you have in that job description. And then you have the basis of why you should be hired because you have a significant number of skills that you've highlighted that are out there for particular jobs. And that's what we call a skill inventory. Have that down at the bottom. What are your accomplishments? Once you go through different job postings and have an idea of those skills, then you can, once you've highlighted those, then you can go back and think about what are some real life examples that substantiate my knowledge and ability to perform or know about that one skill. And so that's what we call accomplishments. So then you are doing your self-assessment that way. You're looking at what you want to do. You are looking at the different type of job postings are out there that are out there. You're circling what type of, or highlighting what skills are related to that position that you have. And then you're creating stories to substantiate, and stories are based on different field placements that you've had and also different courses that you've taken that demonstrates that you have the knowledge and skills and abilities that are centered around the job descriptions that you've indicated or highlighted. And you don't have to have every skill. No one has every skill that an employer wants. Usually when an employer puts a job description out there, they're going to put their pie in the sky. It's almost like dating online. You put everything that you want in that person and you're hoping that the people who are applying or seeking you out will have the majority of those skills. Everyone isn't going to have exactly everything. And oftentimes they will have minimum requirements and then desired requirements. So as many as you can kind of hit within those different jobs, the better that you are in your resume and in your documents, but you don't have to have everything that's listed there. I know I get that question a lot. And then there was one question that came in, I think the other day, from a participant who was registered for this session, and they asked about limitations in their field placement. And because of COVID, this one student was only able to have one field placement instead of 2 field placements. And so they feel that they will not have all the different skills that are related to the population that they want to work with. And so one thing about that is coursework counts. So not only does your field experiences count, coursework. So if you have the ability to take courses that are related to that population, that is still gaining some skills to be able to work with that population. And you can talk about that if you are applying to a job where that population is of importance. There's also the ability to, if you have, can do volunteer work. I know there's some limitations there, but volunteer work or research project that at your school that is related to that population, that is also a good way to kind of broaden your skill set when you have limitations on what type of field work you're able to do. And sometimes your field placement will entertain you creating a side project. So you may be able to approach your agency to work with another agency if they have some type of community or like a community group or agency group where they all get together and work. Then you may be able to pick up an extra project and be able to broaden your skills that way. But just keep in mind that no one has every skill that an employer is looking for. You just want to highlight the best ones and the more, the ones that you have that are mostly related to the job and be able to talk about it. Right
Michelle,
here is.
can I add one thing to that?
Sure, yeah.
I was just going to say, as it relates to not having all the skills that sometimes are listed, this also includes licensure, as in limited license versus full license. Some applications or descriptions will say they want a full license, or it will list licensed social worker. Oftentimes those places will accept a limited license, so don't feel like you can't apply for that. And if you're not sure, you can always call the organization and ask that just directly. Hey, I saw this position's open up and it required a license. Is a limited license going to qualify for it? Because most of the time it will, because that is a license.
Right. That's a great point, because I get that question a lot. There's a lot of organizations have not updated their job description. They'll just, so it just has licensed social worker. And what does that really mean? It means limited or full license. So they just say license. So I have this slide for those of you who are in the macro areas. A lot of times when you're searching for social work jobs, if you just put in social work, you will get the majority of direct services and clinical jobs that will come up in different search engines, or if you're looking at websites or so forth, they all have social worker and they mean therapist, direct caseworker, case management, the majority of the time. If you are interested in more macro areas of social work, we have a survey that we conduct with our alumni or recent graduates from our school. And so I asked some of our macro alumni, what are your job titles? And I wanted to share this with students in our program and also with you to get an idea of the variety of job titles out there. And these are graduates who are 6 months out of an MSW program. So these are typically kind of entry-level type titles for macro positions. And a lot of them center around project management, program management, community-based outreach positions, some human resource kind of quality control, evaluators, analysts. Team leader was another common type of, I think, word. A lot of startups, small startups will have team leader instead, or team lead as a person who is directing a particular program. So if you're out there scanning the landscape for macro type jobs within different organizations, you will want to look at other job titles besides social worker, and that will get you close to jobs that are more macro focused and that are willing to hire social workers for those positions, and you're not spinning your wheels looking for jobs that are out of the social work scope or realm. So that's what that slide's about. And then we're going to talk about agencies where you can find the work that you want to do. Who are hiring social workers? And there are many different ways that you can scan the territory out there, landscape, to find organizations. So certainly utilize your field placement time. If you are developing a great relationship with your field faculty or your field supervisor at your field agency or field placement, then if there is a job that you see within your organization that you have your field placement at that you're interested in, certainly your field placement might be an option, but your field supervisor may know of other agencies that they could connect you with or other people in agencies, so you can get to know them and be able to maybe find a job within a similar field placement agency. So utilize your time in field placement well. Other schools of social work, I know our school social work has an online job bulletin where, as Dwayne was talking about, it's an uptick in openings now, and everything is online. So I'm getting at least a couple of job postings a day where I'm putting them on our job bulletin, and that is available. We're a public institution, so you can go right on our job career services page and put job bulletin or school social work at the University of Michigan, put in job bulletin, and then they take you right to our bulletin, and you can search for jobs that I post every day. And there are other universities that do the same thing. If you're thinking about like Maryland, University of Maryland does a job bulletin. USC has a job bulletin that you can get to with their social work. Washington and Seattle does the same thing. So make sure if you're going, around the state or out of state, checking out other schools of social work to see what type of jobs. Texas, University of Texas at Austin is a career services page as well in a job bulletin. Sometimes trying to find like-minded organizations where you can do your work might involve just a simple Google search. So I've sat down with students, and like this one student was interested in youth development in the Bay Area or in Oakland, California. So we just put that in the search engine, and different organizations that had that as a tag popped up. And so she was able to list those organizations. We went to the website to get an idea of what the mission was, what they're about, looked at opportunities there for that person. So just a simple Google search by area of interest and location will yield some organizations that you might be able to target. United Way has a great web page across the country that are related to different counties or districts. So Washtenaw County United Way, there's an Oakland County United Way page, and usually the United Way is a funder of smaller organizations, and they have their partner agencies listed and a link to those agencies from their web page. So that gives you an idea of just the wealth of organizations out there that are doing good work, and you can go directly to that that web, their organizations or agencies webpage directly from United Way. United Way is also an option. Some of our macro social workers go and work for the United Way in funding smaller organizations doing macro work there. And then some of you have heard about some of these search engines, but it's Indeed.com, really great. There's idealist.org and workforgood.org as well. ZipRecruiter has separate pages just for social workers. So that's available as a search. And then for you all who are in Michigan, and maybe similar states out there, there is the Michigan Nonprofit Association. So if you're interested in seeing what nonprofits are doing, the Michigan Nonprofit Association has a membership of smaller or nonprofit organizations in Michigan. They have job postings directly on their website as well. So a lot of students will go there to get an idea of some of the job postings. And they also have information about salaries. They conduct a survey every year of individuals, employees at nonprofit organizations, and they post salary information. So you want to get an idea of how much someone's being paid for a position you're interested in. They have that information that you can access from their website. Colleges and universities. I know the University of Michigan we employ about 600 social workers throughout the University of Michigan in many different places, anywhere from career services to student services and academic advisors to CAPS counselors, that's counseling and psychological support, health services, medical social workers. So don't discount colleges and universities, especially big medical campuses, as areas where you can potentially find employment as a social worker. Also, if you're interested in research and maybe going on to a PhD, a lot of institutes that are on college campuses will employ you as a researcher. And so you gain that research experience and go on to a PhD program. Advocacy agencies and think tanks, of course. And if you're interested in public service, there is a website called Public Service Careers, where you can look at different opportunities for fellowships, internships, as well as public service jobs that will get you closer if you're interested in working for like a county or state. I already talked about our career services job bulletin. Professional organization, see, there is so much information out there. I highly recommend that you get connected to professional organizations. Dwayne's probably going to talk about NASW and what opportunities they have for you as members. There's also, if you're graduating or a recent graduate and you want to pursue a position as a school social worker in K through 12. So if you're staying in Michigan or if you're going to another state, every state has a chapter of Association of School Social Workers. You can join for free. They have job postings on there. They often have networking events and conferences. And then there's the Network for Social Work Management. These are all professional organizations. Some for community organization, and there is even an American Evaluators Association, where if you're interested in that type of work, you can join. They have conferences, different type of webinars, and they have their own job postings and networking events through their organization. And then if you want to go worldwide, certainly there is opportunities. NASW is represented internationally. There's an international arm of NASW. There's a Canadian Association of Social Workers, and there's a United Kingdom Association of Social Workers. So they help you through, with United Kingdom, if you want to work there, they help you through the registration process, and they have their own job postings on their website as well. And their registration process is similar to what we call licensure. They just call it registration in the UK. So networking is, I talked about how a lot of the jobs are online. A lot of organizations still rely on third-party endorsements and referrals to interview prospective employees or to hire. So the more that you're out there networking, and letting people know what you're interested in, what your goals are, the better you are at getting your documents recognized, and the better you are at getting the lead for positions that might be forthcoming as well. So if you haven't already, creating a LinkedIn account or a profile, you can have your resume on LinkedIn. You can highlight skills that you have and different populations that you work with, knowledge that you've gained in your BSW or MSW program. And sometimes a recruiter will reach out to you because you put certain keywords out there. And Twitter is good if you're interested in following particular people within organizations. If you have a long-term goal to be an executive director, or if you want to follow an organization, they may have a Twitter account, and that way you're in the know of kind of what's going on. Also, sometimes we'll follow different people who are in the career services type field, even if they're not related to social work, just to get tips about just job searching and interviewing. And then I put informational interviewing. If you have the opportunity to connect with an alumni association within your organization, within your school, your alumni association, then that is a great way to network with social workers. And then sometimes those folks who are alumni, but they're not social workers, but they work for organizations that like universities or medical or hospitals that you're interested in. They're an alum of your school, but they're in that setting, and they may be able to help you get connections. So always utilize your alumni networks and your alumni association, your schools. And then don't forget about your faculty. I know I was able to get my first job just by having a conversation with a faculty member. I had a class with them several times, and I talked about what I was interested in. And just out of the blue, they emailed me some information about a job. And I was able to kind of follow through with that. So don't forget about, faculty and people within your field placement. And I talked a little bit about professional organization, kind of using conferences and workshops as well to kind of network with individuals to get yourself out there. Even if it's online, there are oftentimes a way that they have breakout rooms, you're able to make connections even online, for a workshop or a training. Some of our students opt to, if there isn't a current job posting and they have some flexibility, they may get temporary employment. This might happen in a hospital. Say if you want to work for Michigan Medicine, then sometimes they might have temporary or contingent positions available where you're working in the ER. And some of our students have grabbed onto that, got a temporary position in the ER, and then rotated into a full position once it opened up. So that's a good way to get into an organization that might not have a full-time job posting or job available. And I talked a little bit about informational interviewing. I don't know if all of you know what informational interviewing is, but it's really fact finding. It's you sitting down with someone who is doing the work that you're interested in or hiring for the position you're interested in. And you contact them, and most people are willing to sit down with you and talk about their organization or talk about jobs. They may not say, if you ask them, do you have a job open or will you hire me? They might be reluctant to kind of sit down with you at that point. But if you're just finding information, they're more willing to kind of sit down and give you information to prepare you. They know what it's like to be new to the field, and so they're willing to help. And so an informational interview, you would sit down with someone for about 30 minutes, and you will have some written questions, and you would ask them about the job you're interested in, what's a typical day like, what skills they're looking for to fill that type of position should one come available. How can you best position yourself for that type of job? What are some of the challenges out there for the work that is being done or the organization? What's the salary range? That's a good opportunity to get some information about salary ranges in an informal setting, because it's not a formal interview and you have an idea of what people are paying for that particular job. Is licensing required? So a lot of that information, anybody else that they could refer you to that might be helpful for your job search, that is a lot of information that you can get from just informational interviewing. And you also are building your network that way, because you're meeting new people and you are introducing yourself to new people about what you're interested in. And oftentimes, some information about job openings or leads usually come from that informational interviewing. Informational interviewing is also great to help you, prepare for kind of long-term jobs as well. So you get an idea of what you would need to do. Now, if you're a BSW student, you're interested, say, in being a data analyst for like Mathematica, which is a large consulting organization, what are some of the things that you might need to do in the MSW program to get you in a position to be hired by a consulting agency once you get your MSW? So there's a wealth of information that you can get by just sitting down with people. And usually after an informational interview, you'll send a follow-up email, like a thank you letter. And oftentimes that kind of keeps them engaged in your job searching. And that was a lot of information that I went over, and very quickly. So does anyone have any questions? I know there's a lot, so.
While people are thinking of questions, Michelle, that was really fantastic. Thank you, by the way. I took a couple of notes of things that takeaways that I took away from your speech. One, be comfortable with online and virtual interviews. So, we're all, I think, have been Zoom masters in the last year. Do you have any thoughts about, now that we are in a virtual climate, the formality of interviews? Like, what do you wear in a Zoom interview versus an in-person interview? Has that changed now that we are somewhat in a more casual environment?
So I would always advise to dress like you would for an in-person interview, even if you're at home, because you just never know what might happen in the background. And so you want, when an organization is meeting you, sometimes for the first time, face-to-face, but it's virtually, still first impressions count. And if you've taken the time to make yourself presentable, even if it's virtually, then it means that you're taking the interview and their position seriously. And oftentimes we as social workers are the face of the organization. We're out there in the community and they want to make sure that you're going to be presentable, being a representative of their organization. So it is still good to dress like you would for an in-person interview, even if it is online.
Great. And I see there's a comment from Rachel G. kind of around that too. What do you think about background? Like my beautiful Brazilian background for an interview.
I think backgrounds are fun. I think I haven't gotten any type of feedback that, if you have a background like you have, Dwayne, that is fine. I think you want to make sure your background isn't a distraction, in the sense that you want to make sure that it's just clean. So if someone is looking back there, it's not just a dirty kitchen or a disheveled, like storage room or something like that, that might
Like
look
a cat collage.
that could be fun, because then they know that you are, you know, an employee. They might ask you about self-care and how do you, manage your time. And so you might say, well, I'm a very fun person, and that's, you know, reflected in the background. And so that's okay. But not anything that's like is too distracting in terms of being messy, or I would stray away from something that is that might be a trigger for someone, meaning that that, you know, like bad, you know, cuss words, you know, something like that, or spring break picture where everybody's drinking or something. So keep it professional.
No, that makes sense. Some of the other things that I took away was be very targeted with your language for each job and tailoring each of your resumes and cover letters for each one of those positions, because you may get run through a word search, and
Right.
sometimes even if you have the same skill, if it's not listed the way that the organization wants it, you may get weeded out of the
Right.
process.
That's right, especially federal, larger organizations, federal, they want to see that you have exactly what they're looking for in terms of some of those keywords. So as much as you can repeat that on your resume, the better, especially for federal positions. So you want to make sure it's targeted. Yeah.
Yeah, great. And one of the other tips you said was around informational interviewing, and how that can be a good way to get the inside scoop on an organization, and potentially be an easier way to ask about salary without feeling that pressure because you're not actually interviewing. And that goes kind of into Bethany's question. Do you have insight on where to find salary information and any strategies on negotiating?
Sure. So I know that we keep salary information. So there are some schools of social work that were represented in different states here. So if your school of social work collects data from recent graduates, they will have some information about salary ranges for different positions. And I keep that information and share that with students. Also, sometimes a lot of the public institutions, like with our university, the federal government, you can Google the job title and the salary, and ask, you know, salary range for this position for this organization. Say it's the Health and Human Services. So if it's a federal position or an organization that's public facing, oftentimes they have their job salaries posted online. So you're able to just look it up and get an idea of what people are being paid for the position you're interested in. And then you can use that as a baseline. If this is an organization that's a little bit smaller, you can use that information as a baseline. Salary.com is another website where you can look up salary information. And then the Bureau of Labor Statistics collects information about salaries across the country. So all those different places, you can get an idea of what ranges are. And that's what you'll probably find out, is a range for different positions. And for salary, for my tips, don't wait until you get into an interview and get offered a job to do the research about salaries. So, because oftentimes people will wait and they have no idea what to do at that point. So when you are conducting informational interviews or searching for different jobs that you're interested in applying for, that's the time that you will you should get an idea of what the market rate is for the job. And that's looking at salary.com and your school social work information, and looking at public websites for information that's published about job salaries. So you have an idea before you even apply for a job what the salary range is. Then when you are in an interview, and if you get offered a job right after the interview, and usually they will either email you or call you on the phone and say, we love to hire you. Would you like to come aboard for this position for X amount of money? And then they'll go over their benefits. So at that point, you have an idea, because you've done some research, what the range is. And that way you have an idea of how much you can negotiate, because you have an idea of the range is, and then you have an idea of, one, you know that they want you to come aboard, they're offering you the position. So you're in a good position to negotiate because they want to hire you. You know what the range is. So at that point, you say, thank you. And can I take a couple of days to look over the offer, to look over the benefits, and give you a call back? Take a day or two to think about it. And that gives you some time to write down how much you want to negotiate and the reason why. And those couple of days just give you some breathing room, because you're going to be so excited. Because if you accept at that point, you've accepted that job at that salary. There's no negotiation after that point. So take a couple of days and review the salary. You're going to review the benefits as well, because benefits are really important, because that is going to determine how much you might have to pay for health insurance, what type of health insurance, retirement. And I know it's hard to think about retirement now, but it's good to know that's a potential benefit, days off, all of those things that come as an additive, professional development money, whether or not you have to pay for licensure, or is licensure a part, the supervision, is that a part of the job? So those are things that you should be thinking about and writing down and reviewing. So when you call the employer back, you have an idea of how much you want to negotiate. So if you want to negotiate $5,000 more, you know that it's not more than what people are making in that position. And maybe you got a lower amount, and so you want to move the needle a little bit, you can call back and say, I'm really excited about the position and I want to come on board. Is there any way that you could offer me $5,000? Because based on my research, I've seen people in a similar position making this amount of money, and I would like to make close to that, because I have the knowledge, the education that you're looking for, and also bring to you these particular skills. And so that way you at least have spent some time thinking about it prior to even going into, at least have an idea of what the market rate is, taking some time to think about it, writing down what you want, calling the employer back, and then you're stating what you want, and then they will respond to that. Either, yes, we can, or I have to talk with my HR department or the supervisor for this position, or maybe we can't, but they might be able to give you a signing bonus. There are many possibilities. Sometimes they might say, no, I've given you the large amount of money, but at least you ask. And then you can decide whether or not you want to accept that position.
That's really good advice, Michelle. And I will say many social work employers do not do a good job of showing what their benefits are up front. And so that's why sometimes it's really critical to ask, because it may not be what you want, especially as it relates to social work supervision. You know, if you have to contract somebody outside of supervision, we're seeing that around $40 to $50 an hour on average to contract a supervisor out. That's $200 a month. Like that's quite a bit of money that could be out of your pocket if you don't know that ahead of time, right? And so you want to get a good sense. There are some organizations that are really great about all their fringe benefits. They may pay your phone bill, they may pay for your membership in NASW, they may pay for additional credentials, but you want to know that before you kind of step into the role and realize something that you really think is critical is missing. Same thing with, does the organization qualify for student loan forgiveness? And is that important for you? Because if you are at a certain debt level, you may need to be at an organization that does qualify. And some do, some don't. And so it's good to ask that during that process. And and I know when you get that offer, you're going to want to immediately just say yes, because I was in that same boat. But you want to take that time to really just review everything. And you may end up having a couple of different offers. I was talking to a student in Alpena actually yesterday, and she already had 10 job offers in Northern Michigan. And Northern Michigan, there are tons of jobs because they're like begging the social workers to be there. So especially if you're like flexible and willing to work in a rural area, if you get 10 offers, you then have a different negotiation strategy, right? And you can really use that to your advantage and really put them one against another and say, okay, this is what this place offers, this is what this one may offer, and it may really come down to what is going to benefit you in the long term. But like Michelle said, that first starting salary is going to dictate a lot, right? It's how much is going to be in your 401k. It's going to be how much you might be able to pay off in student loans. It's going to be how much you can, live off of. And so you want to make sure that first number is going to be the highest that we can get to right out of school. And so some of it is that self-reflection and that self-assessment, and some of it's doing that market research.
The other thing I forgot to add is to sit down and create a budget. So a budget for yourself, so you know how much you need to live off of. So what's your student loans going to be, how much you need in housing, your car, if you have a car payment, insurance, so that you have an idea of how much you need to live off of. And then when you do get an offer, you know how that stacks up with your expenses. And that way you have an idea. So it's good to have that knowledge beforehand. So then you feel comfortable too. One person asked about relocation assistance. We've had some of our graduates get relocation assistance from organizations, especially if you have to move across country. So when an organization makes you an offer, then you can ask. If they say, if you have any questions, you're going to take a couple of days to think about it. But if they say you have any questions initially, you can ask, do you provide any relocation assistance? And they'll let you know whether or not they do. And that can be a part of your negotiation. If they do, then when you call them back, you can explore that further, kind of what that might look like, how much. Some organizations have a fixed amount that they provide. Some work with moving companies or vendors where they provide that type of assistance. So it's usually after they have made you an offer that you talk about relocation expenses.
And I can add my own personal story to that. So when I got offered the position at NASW, it was in a different city than where I was living, and they did not have a relocation budget. But what they were able to do was be able to give me a small chunk out of my own salary for the yearly amount that would allow me to basically pay my down payment on my apartment for the move. So while it's not ideal, it's not on top of what you're making, sometimes there's a little bit of flexibility in how the organizations offer if you do absolutely need that for a move.
Yeah, or a signing bonus. I had one of our graduates who they didn't have relocation, but they provided a signing bonus. And in addition to Northern Michigan, Alaska are giving out a lot of sign-in bonuses for social workers who want to go work in Alaska. And we have a couple of alum who are in Anchorage. So,
I had a question
Sorry, go
about
ahead.
that. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Sabrina.
The online applications that we're filling out, does anyone have feedback on like your resume? At least I was told to keep it to kind of 2 pages because I don't have a lot of experience, so don't make it too long. But now that I think of it, the online application, am I supposed to make that bigger, like add more detail? Or like, what's the etiquette for the difference between the two? Because it seems like it's plugging in the wrong information. I have to redo it anyway. So what am I thinking when I'm going in and putting this new information in the online application?
so it's a fillable form, or is it an upload?
So everything that I have noticed so far, especially with hospitals and that type of setting, or big organizations, it will just parse information and it's not in the correct spot. So I have to redo everything anyway. And then also, is there like a limit of how many past employers you would put on there? Because you can add or delete what they have.
Yeah, so that's similar to like the federal government too. So that one, you would just fill out you would fill out the information per employer. So there's no page limit really, because it's they're creating almost a resume for you, is what I'm understanding what you're talking about. So you're just putting your employer, your job title. Sometimes they will ask you what your salary was or pay rate. So, and then you put your job duties in one section. So as much information that you can provide, the better, that they're looking for. So you don't have to worry about a page limit. The federal job postings have a similar format. You can do either or. You can input the information and it creates the resume for them, or you can upload your own resume. So I don't think you have to worry about a page limit for that. I think just being very specific about detailing your experiences as they relate to the job. So if they do print it off or look at it, they can see within those job duties what you have, what skills do you have that are directly related to the job. If you are uploading a resume and a cover letter, then usually your cover letter is 1 page and your resume is about 2 pages on average. So most nonprofits, if you're uploading it, it's about 2 pages.
Okay.
But
And then
oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, what's a better name for intern? Because all of my experience in the field is either intern, or I did have a part-time job as a mental health assistant, but could I say trauma informed, or like the name of what?
You could, and sometimes creating what they call a working title. So it would be, say, if you were, some people have put like clinical intern, or MSW clinical intern for a position. If it's a more macro type job, then similar to if it's project, it's a project management type internship where that's primarily you're doing, then you're a project manager intern, and then you can still put MSW, you can put a working title there that's somewhat related to the type of job title that field placement might be if it was a real job. Does that?
Yeah, because I was like, oh man, putting intern in there, it's like, they're gonna not look at me at all. So
Right.
how do you make it more specific, I guess,
Mhm,
to where they would say, oh, well, that's, more of a niche and it's what we're looking for. So, but I mean, are you mirroring everything that's in your resume? If it's one of those uploads, like everything that's on my resume, I'm putting, in that system?
I think with the hospital, if it's a medical type position, a large organization, yes. If it's a federal governmental type job, a university, a large university, then yes. Nonprofits, you can get away with a little bit of similarities there. It doesn't have to be exact, like smaller nonprofits, mid-sized nonprofits, they're going to look at your resume and read it differently than say the federal, like a federal organization where they're using scanners. So when I talked about, your skills being exactly related to the job you're looking for, that was to get past large organizations that have pre-screeners and application tracking systems. But most smaller or mid-sized nonprofits, it would be most likely a hiring director or person who is looking at your resume. So you don't have to you don't have to do it exactly. You can have a little bit more variety.
Thank you. Really helpful. Appreciate it.
Denard, did you still have a question?
Yes. The question kind of follows up on what was just shared here by Sabrina, I believe. In regards to making yourself like the best fit or standing out, is there anything that you would suggest? Like, for example, I know there's the trauma certifications, but that's a lot of people are doing that now. Is there anything that you see that you would recommend people, especially like with evaluation? I know there's that project management that you see that people could actually start doing now to make themselves stand out in the field?
And specifically for macro?
Yeah, I would say, yeah. But, well, specifically for me as an evaluator, I would definitely love
Okay.
macro, but I don't want to limit it to it because I know there's other people here. But yes, if you could speak towards that, that would be helpful.
Yeah, there are a couple of things. If they're the ease of creating data tools for data collection, meaning survey instruments. So learning how to create different tools to collect data, or being very adverse in that. Data visualization, that means putting the data together in a very visual, like charts, being able to manage that so you create a report that's like professional, pristine. And so if you are able to do that type of work with data, then and report writing, then those two things. And the other are different types of technologies used to, or software programs. So making sure that you're adverse with Excel and other types of spreadsheets, and highlighting that, because some consulting firms will actually send you data in the Excel spreadsheet as part of the interview process. And then you would have to use that as your presentation for your interview. Mathematica does. So. All right.
This may be an unrelated question, but I know since I had an opportunity to do a one-on-one with you real quick, thank you very much for this information. But I think as I was transitioning from my internship into an opportunity, I didn't know, like typically, in these areas, I'm in rural Southwest Michigan. So typically it's non-paid internships that we would get. So it was interesting that I was actually encouraged by the employer to have a conversation about pay as an intern. So in your experience, how do we start having those? Would you suggest having those conversations? How do we put a pulse on that in regards to, because like, just to be honest, someone like I have a family, non-paid internships is like, it's a difficult thing where you still want to show that you are a viable candidate, but you also know that you need to feed your family. So how do you navigate that part of it as well?
Yeah, that can be really tricky, especially in social work, because a lot of organizations that have field placements have institutional agreements already established with the field office. So I know students in our program have been advocating for paid field placements and have gotten some traction with some funding for travel and a small stipend for some of the agencies. So I would probably, in terms of social work, start with your field office. And if you have a student union, doing some organizing around with a student union or student government within your school, kind of advocating through that way, because I think if you individually as students start trying to speak with your field agency about it, it will put the school in kind of an awkward position and the field site in an awkward position. So I would start with kind of trying to organize and do advocacy through students, orgs, in the field office and seeing what traction you could make that way. And maybe bringing in sometimes your dean might get in the conversation, but that would be my best answer. It's really tricky because field agencies might feel kind of awkward if you do that type of negotiation on your own per agency. Probably not the answer you wanted to hear, but
no, that's actually very on par with what I was advised as well. It's just case by case. Michelle, there was a question in the chat. Where are the best websites to get these certifications that we've been talking about?
Okay, so there isn't one website, actually. Through some of the professional organizations that I listed, like the Evaluators Association, they have trainings that you can be a part of as member or non-member. So professional organizations. Also, sometimes if you're at, I know with our school, there are trainings that are offered through field sites. So some field sites send their employees to specific training. So you as an intern may be able to participate in those same trainings like CAFIS and Excel. And CAFIS is like an assessment tool for families. And so some of our students get that type of training just through their field placement or investigating those opportunities or through professional organizations. Oh, the other, excuse me, the other would be a continuing ed. Like NASW has a lot of continuing ed webinars and opportunities. And so sometimes there's a student rate for some of those continuing ed offerings, and at our school we have a student rate as well. So you might be able to get some training just going through a continuing ed opportunity through a school social work.
Michelle, one of the other questions that came through that I think I've heard quite regularly from students is, what do I do if I don't have social work history or a lot of it to put on my resume? My general advice is you do. You have a lot of it, more than you think you do, but every job you've ever had can be framed in a social work manner. It's really just how does it directly apply to the job you want. Like I was the same thing. I did not have a BSW. I went from my undergrad in psychology and music into social work. And so like my experience was not at all kind of in a social work space, but I worked in housing. I did web design and newsletter stuff and political advocacy. Those weren't social work experiences, but they directly tied into the job I wanted. So it's all about like especially for graduating students, it's about reframing your skill sets into a
Mhm.
social work language. And I don't know if you have any advice for folks who are struggling with that.
Sure, sure. I think the exercise of looking at different job postings and like you're saying, reframing the skills that you did develop, we call them transferable skills, because sometimes, say if you've done a lot of customer service type jobs, that's a lot of interpersonal practice. That's being able to work in a fast-paced environment that would be great for a hospital setting, for instance. So there are transferable skills that you can look at, even if you didn't have a social work background, that would be relevant to social work positions, and people would value, that type of experience. So I think really reviewing, going back and looking at the jobs that you did have and seeing, okay, what are some maybe transferable skills that are, or related skills that I could highlight, that someone can see that I've been building on, that are relevant to the social work position. You can also craft your resume a little bit differently. You can have a functional resume instead of a chronological resume. A functional resume is a listing of specific skills at the top that you want to highlight. So it could be project management, it could be interpersonal practice or clinical skills, could be research skills. So you have skills related up at the top, and then you have bullet points to describe your accomplishments related to their skills, and it's not job focused. It's focused on the skills that you developed over time. And that's the first thing that an employer would see. And then at the bottom or in the back, then you list chronologically the jobs that you had. So that way, when an employer looks at your resume, they'll see all of your skills and not the specific jobs first. And I don't know if you have I know you sent out a link to resumes. If you had an example of a functional resume.
Yeah, the other advice I usually give folks too, as it relates to resumes, it's good to kind of have multiple versions. Having a more modern looking one versus a more traditional looking one, because it may depend on the type of place you're applying for,
right,
what may
right.
be more appealing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many places you can get free or cheap templates for that now, but
Mm-hmm.
having multiple people look over your resumes before they get sent out.
Right.
We do cover letter and resume editing at NASW, like most of your schools has a career office. And I'll tell you, there's so many times where there's like a header spelled wrong, where, you just overlook it, but you need that other set of eyes, because if an employer got it, that's just going to be an immediate, like, toss you off the pile, unfortunately. So just as many people as you can have peer review that before it gets out, the better.
Mm-hmm. And if you have a chance to serve on a hiring committee at your field placement, that is a wonderful experience, because you get to look at a lot of different resumes and cover letters, and you get an idea of what people like, what they don't like, and it's a range, but you can see the variety of what is out there that's not tailored to a job, what is really good and tailored to a job, and it really gives you a good sense of how to present yourself too. Yeah. And if you don't have a lot of direct social work experience, that is a great answer to what is your weakness question that is often asked during interviews. You could say, yeah, I'm coming in green. I don't have as much experience, social work experience, as a lot of other applicants that you might have in a pool, but I have the passion, I have this related experience. You can turn that into a very positive aspect of what you would bring an organization, being new.
And the other thing, I think a lot of younger social workers right now, especially in a pandemic world where things are virtual, many of you have skill sets that you probably don't even view as skill sets just because of how when you were brought up, right? Like being able to use social media and web design and being able to build, graphics. Those are all things additionally that organizations want. And I know there's a lot of mentoring that happens from younger social workers to older social workers, especially in this technology age. And those are things that you can bring to the interview table as well that right now are real timely.
Definitely, because I had to learn all of that, and I learned it from interns, because I was, of course, out of date. I'm not in the know, so.
It's okay. I wanted to bring to your attention, and again, this is a wealth of information. There was a question posed by Rachel. Speaking of interview questions, are there any questions that you come across in social work interviews that wouldn't show up in the list of typical interview questions?
Tell me about a time where you made a mistake or failed, and what did you do? And so I've had that stump a couple of people.
What is I guess also the person may be speaking for Rachel, but I'm actually curious to wonder, the same way that you gave a similar response to the previous question, how would we reframe that if we're stumped?
So, well, I would be authentic in answering the question. I wouldn't say I never made a mistake or anything. So I would take a couple of minutes, and you can, not a lot of time, and think about how you want to answer the question, because you don't want to give them a red flag or anything that would give them concern about hiring you. So I would think about something that you learned and that was related to social work. For instance, if someone asked me that question, as I got older, it was hard for me to rely on just my memory. And being younger, I relied on my memory a lot to get certain things done. And I realized that when I missed an important deadline and almost freaked out, I was able to address it and correct it, and everything worked out well. But I missed the important deadline because I didn't write it down and I didn't have it on my calendar. So that was the time I messed up, and I really learned that, okay, you're getting older and you have multiple projects. You can't remember everything. And you have to have some type of organizational system to keep track of work and life and everything. So that would be an example of how I would say I made a mistake, and I generally did, but everything worked out and I learned from it. So typically pick something that wouldn't be cause for concern, but you generally learn from something and it kind of worked out, or you learned, or you did something differently or would do something differently.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think, remember, as an interviewee, you are also the interviewer.
Right.
And so you want to make sure you are prepared with the question. As somebody who's been an interviewer a lot of times, people who tend to be the best candidates have questions back to you. Right. And so hopefully you're not leaving with, no, you answered everything. There should hopefully be at least something that you can push back on and say, how does the organization value diversity? And what does that look like in practice, right? That's a good social worky type of question. Or what does the evaluation process look like annually, or how do people get feedback at the organization? And how do we as a staff provide that to management? There are lots of things that you can bring back and use what you've learned in your internship or throughout your program and what you would have liked to have asked at that time into your future interviews. Because a lot of times agencies are really going to like those sort of questions, as well as make sure to follow up, especially if there are several good candidates for a position. Sometimes just writing a follow-up email or a letter will be the deal breaker between you and somebody else, especially if you're like if you check all of the other boxes very similarly, if you have that personal connection that you've tried to make with them.
Yep, definitely have questions, and they shouldn't be questions that are obvious from their website. So having the similar questions in what Dwayne talked about are really good.
Well, I know we're at about time. Does anybody have any last questions that you're burning to get out before we kind of wrap up for today?
Dwayne,
yes, Jennifer, be friendly with the receptionist. Yes, be friendly with your receptionist or whoever you talk to on the phone.
Yeah, definitely. The interview starts from the point the person who calls you to schedule the interview. That's when your interview starts. So any interaction you have with that organization from that point on is a part of your interview.
wow, that's powerful. Dwayne, there's a question. Where will this recording be available, and if so, where?
We'll likely have it on the NASW-Michigan YouTube page, so feel free to check that out. If you're not a member, I'll just do a quick plug. We are doing the giveaway for March, so if you join in March, we're doing for Michigan folks, registration for our licensure prep course in May, a graduation cord, and a professional social work pin. And the other thing that's going to be happening that we haven't announced yet is if you join NASW and are also planning to attend the conference in April, we're going to be giving away a year of free liability insurance.
Ooh,
so that's going to cover you, especially if you're graduating and entering the field. That'll be really helpful as you kind of start your professional career out. So there'll be some more information about that hopefully by the end of this week, but just wanted to give that little plug. All right, well, we are at a little after 7, so I want to respect everybody's time. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Denard and Jennifer, for pulling this town hall together again. I think Denard's got one other thing. Thank you, Michelle. I'll turn it over to Denard, and my last words will be go blue.
Go blue. Yes, I do want to reiterate, Michelle, thank you so much for all the information that you shared. And my hopes is that whoever is here, I believe that anything good is not meant to be kept for yourself. So feel free once it's posted to share it. And I encourage you to do the same. Thank you, Jennifer, for always partnering with us. Thank you to Wayne for the wealth of resources. I do also want to say that we are also, Jennifer and we are also encouraging others to recognize that the student voice is necessary at every table. And so therefore, I just want to let you know that currently we're seeking board members for the NASW-Michigan chapter. As you can see behind me here, not only is it for the MSW and the BSW, but there's also other positions. So you're not limited to the area of interest. I just want to turn your attention to that. Feel free. We will post that link again on our Facebook page. There's a Facebook page for the students that's here in Michigan. There's a wealth of resources. As I said, as a moderator, there's been numerous employers that were saying, hey, can I post this employment posting? So I just want you to know that there's resources out there for you to be a part of. And there's also an opportunity for you to be at the table to network, just like Michelle said, because that's been one of my biggest opportunities is to sit across from people that have been in this profession for years and provide wealth of resources. And we just sit at their feet and absorb it. And I also want to give Jennifer an opportunity before we leave. Is there anything else that you would like to share with your experience and also or advice that you can give?
I'd just like to reiterate how thankful I am to have Michelle on this call. It's been very, very productive and a wealth of resources for, I'm sure, all students involved. Yeah, I'd encourage any kind of interest in board positions to come and take our positions. Like Denard said, everything good is not worth being kept to yourself. really NASW has been a really collective of cool people to reaffirm your love of social work and being around social workers. So to all of the graduating seniors, congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah. That is all I have, but it was so wonderful to spend the evening with all of you. And yes.
All right, see you.
Well, bye,
All
everyone.
right, thank you.
Thank
Been
you
great.
again, Michelle.
Thank you, everyone.
All right,
Appreciate
bye-bye.
you.
Gina.